Tidbits from TNT, Friday morning, the 7th of March 2025. Listen to the full version on the official dinarreport.com website and become our supporter on Patreon. TNT. Tishwash. Reconstruction. Iraq receives international offers to invest in new residential cities. The New Cities Implementation Authority, affiliated with the Ministry of Construction and Housing, confirmed the referral of residential cities in 5 governorates with integrated designs, and also confirmed the arrival of international offers to invest in the new residential cities. The head of the authority, Hamid Abdul Hamid, said in a statement followed by Ultra Iraq that the first phase included the establishment of 5 new cities that were announced, referred, and started, and reached different stages. There are also other cities that were announced, which are 6 cities, and the announcement period will end during the current month, including the city of Mutanabi in Wasit, the new city of Balad, the city of Salam in the new Najaf, in Nasiriyah, Varka in Samawa, and another city in Al-Majah al-Kabir, south of Mason. Hamid added, a number of countries have come forward to invest in the new cities through joint companies, including Iraqi, foreign and Arab companies, such as Al-Jawari City, which is being implemented in partnership between an Iraqi and Chinese investor, and Al-Ghazlani City in Mosul, which is being implemented in partnership with an Iraqi-Chinese partnership, and on the banks of Karbala in partnership with a Malaysian entity and various Iraqi companies with Arab and foreign banks, in addition to Ali Al-Wardi City for a global investor and Aura company. Hamid stressed that these cities were designed in a way that makes them integrated in all activities, whether housing or other economic activities, indicating that the Narawan residential city will be implemented on an area of 80,000 dunams and in several models. The first is to establish different cities with different areas, and develop infrastructure through investment while guaranteeing a share for the state, and this is one of the facilities if the citizen thinks of buying land that is served in all aspects. Tishwash. Washington demands that Iraq dispense with Iranian energy as soon as possible. The U.S. State Department called on Iraq to end its dependence on Iranian energy sources as soon as possible, hours after Washington announced its intention to tighten sanctions on Tehran. In response to a question about the exemptions granted to Iraq and whether they would be renewed, the Foreign Ministry indicated that it is reviewing all exemptions granted, according to Reuters. Iraq currently produces 27,000 megawatts of electricity through stations, most of which operate on gas, but the production capacity sometimes drops to 17,000 megawatts. This amount, at its maximum, does not meet the country's electricity needs, as Iraq needs to increase production to reach 40,000 megawatts in order to ensure the provision of energy around the clock. To solve this crisis, Iraq resorted to importing quantities of Iranian gas, which threatened to expose it to U.S. sanctions, before the United States granted it an exemption that is renewed periodically. With U.S. President Donald Trump returning to power, he pledged to pursue a policy of maximum pressure against Iran. As a result, the Iraqi government asked the new U.S. administration to extend the waiver granted by the previous administration, according to previous statements by al-Sudani in an interview with the Saudi Al-Sharq channel. Al-Sudani had touched on the issue of ending dependence on Iranian supplies during the interview, noting that the country plans to completely end gas imports by 2028, adding, "There will be clear energy independence." He continued, "Ultimately, we need this exception to continue throughout this period. At the same time, we have started the process of linking energy with neighboring countries in order to cover our needs, and this is part of the concept of integration that we seek with our brothers." This is not the first statement of its kind, but rather comes just days after U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio called Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammad Shia al-Sudani, where they discussed Iranian influence in the region, and Rubio urged Iraq to achieve energy independence. The new U.S. statement may not mean that Washington will not renew the exemption granted to Iraq, but it indicates increased pressure on Baghdad to get rid of these supplies. The comments come hours after U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent confirmed that the U.S. would tighten sanctions on Iran, adding that the U.S. would shut down the country's oil sector using predetermined criteria and timelines. He hinted that making Iran bankrupt again would be the beginning of our updated sanctions policy. The Treasury Secretary suggested that the United States could work with regional actors to help Iran get its oil to market. One of those countries is likely to be Russia, which earlier this week signaled its willingness to help the United States in talks with Iran over ending its nuclear program and its support for anti-American regional proxies. Treasury is prepared to engage in frank discussions with these countries, Besant said. We will work to shut down Iran's oil sector and drone manufacturing capabilities. Tishwash. Parliamentary committee calls on government to refer oil and gas law to Parliament immediately. The deputy chairman of the Parliamentary Oil and Gas Committee, Adnan al-Jabari, called on the government today, Thursday, to expedite the referral of the oil and gas law to the Council of Representatives, stressing that its legislation is an essential step to regulate the management of oil wealth and ensure the fair distribution of revenues between the federal government and the producing regions and governorates. Al-Jabari said in a statement to Al-Maluma agency that the legislation of the oil and gas law is a necessary step to regulate the management of oil and gas wealth in Iraq, noting that this law will contribute to guaranteeing the rights of the producing regions and governorates, in addition to developing a clear strategy for investing these resources in the long term. He explained, the law will protect oil wealth from different interpretations, whether in the Kurdistan region or in the producing governorates, and will work to resolve the existing differences between the federal government and the regional government, and control the relationship between the producing governorates and the center. He pointed out that Article 112 of the Iraqi constitution stipulates the necessity of regulating the oil and gas sector through the enactment of a special law. But the lack of a common vision and agreement between the federal government and the Kurdistan region, as well as between the producing provinces and Baghdad, has prevented its approval so far. He stressed the importance of reaching a consensus that guarantees the rights of all parties, calling on the government to refer the law to the Council of Representatives as soon as possible to ensure the fair and equitable regulation of oil revenues. It is noteworthy that the approval of the oil and gas law was delayed for several parliamentary sessions due to political differences that prevented reaching a consensus on it. Listen to the full version on the official dinarreport.com website and become our supporter on Patreon. Source: dinarrecaps.com